Now, today I don't have a guest, but I have heard a number of people were looking for a review of how the Housing Accelerator Town Hall went. And that is what I am here to do today. So, the key thing that I took away is that we are not done fighting this. That, yes, council did do away with the 4 units as a right, but they left in, I don't know how they missed this, but they left in the discretionary use for administration to allow 8 units as a right, an eightplex, in areas that are close to transit or other key corridors. Now, there's a map that was drawn that administration came out with that they kind of regretted doing. They mentioned that in council chambers that it caused more confusion than anything. This isn't as a right, but it's a discretionary use. If someone, puts forward a request to have an eightplex, towering eightplex beside just a 1960s house over in Bauer area, and administration thinks it's a good idea, well, it's their discretion. That the normal applications would not necessarily be approved by neighbors, or there would be no, mails or letters sent out or anything like that, but it's discretionary use by administration. So this is still a problem, guys. We still are fighting this. And let's not be deceived that even the 4 units as a right is done away with. They have said that they do not agree with it. Council has. Now, it's very convenient that council came back and voted against this right before an election is happening, where 3 of them are running as mayor. But that has nothing to do with anything, right? But in all honesty, guys, I am proud of this council for removing that. I speak tongue in cheek to a certain degree, saying that of course they did it because there's an election happening. I do think sometimes elections happening do compel council to do the right thing, and they did do the right thing. But like I said, we are not done fighting this. So before I review the town hall that happened, let's go back to the beginning. So this is about a housing accelerator grant that our city applied to be part of. Now, we missed the first round of the housing accelerator grant, and if we got into the first round, all this would have been moot. The 4 units is a right, and all these other sort of bribe scenarios weren't part of that. But of course, we missed that. Some people say that we just didn't get in time. Some people said that we're kind of sleeping at that point as a city. So we were able to put in our application, the city, for the second round. So we were able to put our Housing Accelerator grant in for the second round. That's why it's called Half 2. It's the Housing Accelerator Fund number 2. Now, the second round had many more qualifications that you needed to meet and many more requirements that the city needed to meet. Now, the city says they can meet all those requirements and outcomes without having to do the 4 units as a right. So one question I had is, does the city actually need those discretionary eightplex units to be able to meet the requirements of the grant? And then, of course, the question is, if you're going to open it up to eightplex units discretionary, it makes sense that you would be able to do discretionary fourplex units. So I'm really confused about, are fourplex units, the blanket zoning, or at least within the transit corridors, are those gone or are they not? It's very unclear. But I digress, okay? Going back, so the Housing Accelerator Fund grant application was put in. We received $12 million for that. Now, whether that's enough to cover all the costs associated with this is here nor there. We received a bribe to do certain things from the federal government. It's just shady. It's just shady because the federal government actually has no authority in our city and no authority in our province when it comes to things like housing. That's actually a local issue. But when it comes to, trying to have a nationwide plan for housing, it's not going to work because housing looks incredibly different in New Brunswick compared to Alberta, compared to BC. It's a completely different ballpark. Now, you look at Toronto, they have very little land. You look at Red Deer, we have hundreds of acres that we can build on without even expanding. You look at Edmonton, they have a whole section of land where the airport used to be that they can build. So the federal government should not be bribing people. They should be giving money to provinces, and then the province can figure out how to use that money. That's actually the proper chain of command when it comes to giving money out. The province recently just put in a bill, and it was passed to stop the federal government from interfering into cities' jurisdiction like this, because those bribes, I don't know why, but administration sure likes them. They sure like to be bribed by the federal government. But the problem is the consequences that happen are so drastic, and they affect our culture. So the reason why they didn't have to do this with the half two is because this half two application for the grant was put in before that bill was passed. So it's kind of like it's grandfathered in. Now, if we had to submit another application today, the province would have to look it over and approve that funding transfer. So that's just an answer to the question that was asked at the forum. But I keep on getting lost here in rabbit trails. So let me go back once again. And so the number one thing that was in this grant application as far as a requirement was 4 units as a right. A question was asked at the town hall, what does that mean? It basically means that every single lot in Red Deer is zoned to have up to 4 units on that property. Now, if you have a tiny property and you can only fit 2 doors on your property, well, you can only fit 2 doors. But now you have a right to those 2 doors. And if zoning changes down the line, not zoning, but if the permitting process or the setback requirements or things like that change down the road, you might be able to sneak a 3rd door in there. Or if you're able to put a carriage house in, even on a tiny lot, you might be able to, where a garage would be, you might be able to be like, well, that now could be an up and down little carriage house, right? So now you have 4 doors on your property. So 4 units is basically saying that you have the right to develop up to 4 places, livable spaces on your property. And that means that it doesn't matter if you're in Lancaster or if you're in Parkvale, Woodlea, doesn't matter if you're in Rosedale, doesn't matter if Deer Park, Bauer, West Park, Fairview, every single lot in the city would have 4 units as a right. So this really inspired people to speak up, right? And there was an unprecedented amount of people that went to these forums hosted by the city. And apparently, those did not go over well. People did not feel heard. They felt isolated. They felt like they couldn't ask proper questions as far as what's going to happen here. And that inspired a person named Gabriel Beck. I interviewed him last week before this forum to do his own town hall. So he spent his own money to rent a hall, to put out the word, and he invited guests. He invited a guest from Edmonton, from Calgary, and a guest from here in Red Deer that used to be our city manager, actually. So these 3 guests, actually it was 4 guests to be fair. There was I believe a couple that was from Edmonton that both had a short presentation. So these people were the experts, really. Calgary's gone through this and Edmonton's gone through this. So the town hall, hosted by Gabe, had over 125 people attend. This is crazy, guys. This is absolutely insane. Like, I knew that there was going to be a good interest in it, but I thought city council just had a resolution to do away with the 4, right? It's probably going to be toned down, so maybe 50 people, because the people that are really interested in it, that want to know more, and kind of the leaders of the people fighting this, so those people will show up. No, it was 125 people, guys. A town hall with 125 people in Red Deer is insane. I mean, it sounds like it's such a small amount of people, but it's actually a large like subset of the city that went to that. Normal town halls do not see that. So the fact that this is privately done, that this was not done by the city, it was all private advertising, it just shows the amount of interest that is still in this. Like, there's a lot of interest in this issue still, despite council doing away with the 4 is right. So what we heard from these presenters was basically the horror stories of what's happening in Calgary, what's happening in Edmonton, and what will happen here if we do not actually stand up and say, we don't want your bribe, federal government. We want a made in Red Deer solution to the housing issues that this whole country is going through, quite frankly. So they presented and shared how administration used to really work with people. Not Red Deer administration, but let's say Calgary. It used to be great. It used to be a bilateral communication that people felt heard. When concerns were there, they were addressed. And now it's a ramrod that people aren't heard. I just received a text today of a screenshot. 800 people opposed to a 8-plex development. The city ignored every single one of them. Every single one of those people were ignored, and the 8-plex was approved. So this 8-plex gets put through, and we think that that's not going to happen here, guys. Right now, administration has the potential to have discretionary right to push anything through. So if it's an 8-plex or if it's a 4-plex, they still have, in the provision in the grants, the right to push it through within so many meters of transit or corridors or things like that. And as our city grows, so do our transit corridors, so do our main lines and arteries and all that kind of stuff. So this only gets expanded out, guys. This isn't just well, it's only going to be Gates Ave, so I guess sucker, you live there, I guess you have to put up with that. No, it's eventually going to be the whole city. If we add 30,000 people to this city, 30th Ave is not going to be a simple up and down street to get to Gates or to get to Highway 2. It's going to be one of the main corridors. It already is becoming that. So we create policy today that we have to look out into the future. We have to look and be like 10 years, 20 years from now, how are those policies going to be looked at? Because if you write a policy that main corridors within a certain amount of meters can have an eightplex discretionary use from administration, well, those definitions change over time. And so we have to write policy and be involved in this in a way that's going to last. So back to the town hall that went on. There's many questions that were asked to the experts. And like I said, they all sort of focused on what are we going to do about this with the eightplex issue. And like I said, the main theme was the fact that we are not done, that there still is issues, that council missed part of this. I asked a question to Craig Curtis myself, and that was basically, how did we get here? How did we get to the point where administration missed this? How did we get to the point where council missed that the people would obviously not be for this? How did we get to the point of spending $30,000 to deal with this grant and to submit it, and then the town halls and all that kind of stuff that the city put on, and administration not see that this city would not be favorable for it? And I was disappointed in the answer, but I mean, it was a diplomatic answer, right? Because obviously Craig was the city manager, and I respect the fact that he doesn't want to say, oh, you know, administration screwed up. I mean, that was his position, so he probably felt a little protective of that. But it was the fact that there was an issue. He agreed, yeah, like, how did we get here? But he was slow to apply, you know, well, this is how it happened because administration sees it this way and there's often divisions or anything like that. Yeah, I was hoping for an answer like that would just help me understand how administration works, and I didn't get that. It was brought up later. The candidate for mayor, Gareth Scott, was there, and he was basically saying, look, we have to, like, there's no business where something like this would happen and people wouldn't be held accountable. There's no business where you're going to spend a whole bunch of money and it's just going to be a loser scenario from the beginning and they just push through anyways and people wouldn't be held accountable. And he's basically saying, like, we actually do need to get to the bottom of this, right? So I really appreciated those words, because we can't just be like, oh, well, I mean, there goes that issue, and I guess we'll just wait until the next one where the people all stand up and get upset. Like, we actually do need to change the processes. And at the end of the town hall, it was interesting because I overheard a couple conversations. I wasn't eavesdropping or like that, but I did hear a former mayor was there, and I heard him say the words that this is unprecedented in a positive light, where it was a great thing that Gabriel did, right? That this many people showing up to a private town hall is unprecedented. And it was. This is the first time I've ever seen that. And huge props to Gabe for hosting it. And the community was very generous, where they passed around a bucket and they helped cover the costs for Gabe doing it. Because like I said, Gabe, he was just so frustrated that he wasn't able to ask the questions he wanted to ask. He was so frustrated that it seemed like it was a gaslighting session, the first one, and he just wanted people's voices to be heard. The town hall wasn't completely for or against, I should say, this. There was a couple people there that I'm pretty sure that were just sort of, you know, trying to fill the room, but there wasn't any really division on that. There was no fighting or bickering or anything like that. There was a couple questions asked where it was, you know, a little more left leaning or a little more right leaning, and you could feel one side of the room just being like, oh, come on. But that's just part of open democracy, right? Where we're allowed to ask our questions, we're allowed to have our perspectives, we're allowed to talk about things that other people might not agree with. And we should be able to expect a respectful conversation back and forth, right? I would say 6 months ago, you couldn't get these people in the room together. And here we are putting on an event that you have left people in the room, you have right people in the room, diametrically opposed to each other when it comes to federal or provincial politics. And here they are in their room fighting against this thing equally, because they understand that this is not just about a grant, or this is not just about, a left side or a right side. This is about Red Deer. And it was something that I really appreciated, is almost this unity that I haven't seen for years, where it's like, politics aside, guys, this is wrong. This is wrong. A person's home is sacred, and putting up a fourplex, putting up an eightplex beside that, without any say, without any community involvement, without any compensation to a certain degree, it's just morally and ethically wrong. And I don't think council saw that. Now, I do have to say, because I mentioned in my video to Gabe that I really hope that some counselors show up, and there was some counselors that showed up, guys. There was 3 of them, and I said to all of them, thanks for coming. It did actually mean a lot that they came and listened. I think that there was a understanding that they didn't want a majority of council there, because then it's like, if the majority of council is there, then it looks like they're trying to manipulate the situation. I disagree with that perspective. I think that council can go and they can sit on their own. It's not like they need to sit in a group. They can make their own decisions. But I can understand the philosophy. I just think it's wrong. So all that to say, guys, is that the town hall, it was excellent. It's too bad that we don't have an actual recording of it. There was one that happened, but I think there were some issues with the audio and things weren't syncing up, and it was just kind of a nightmare situation. I've been learning about that myself when it comes to do this kind of thing, right? I've had one last thing. I've had about 15 to 20 people ask me to run in the last week, and I am considering it a lot heavier. I am going to wait for sure. I'm going to see about some stuff and see if I can make it work a little more strongly than I was before. I cannot give an answer specifically. And like I said, whether I'm running or not, guys, I really want to support other candidates. I really want to see good people in there. I want to see people that can look beyond 4 years, that make decisions for 20 years down the road, for 30 years down the road, that recognize that when you vote to have open zoning, in 20 years down the road, this city is going to look significantly different than it looks today. Not that we need to stay the same, but you need to have a vision that lasts longer than your own lifetime, quite frankly. So it's like, things actually are, it's important to look at what we have and appreciate it, and to hold on to some of that. That's one thing that I think when you have kids, at least for myself, I can speak, where when you have kids and they start to grow, there's a part of you that dies because your kids are getting older, right? And you look back and it's like, oh man, I just wish I could hold on to that, right? And when you realize that there's things in life that you could actually do that, you could create policy to hold on to that. You could create policy to say, we don't need to tear down every single heritage site. We don't need to do things like that. Now, I'm all for progress in that, but the older I get, the more I appreciate the traditional values and looking at things from a different perspective in a conservative way, which is really weird, because I couldn't see myself saying that 10 years ago. So it's funny how having children changes you a lot, because I look back and it's like, those moments are gone, right? And so when I look at some of our heritage communities and I think about them in the way that, do we really want to just tear them down without a second thought? Do we really want to tear down our tree canopy without a second thought? And I think the answer is no, of course not. There's room for new amongst that, right? There's room for progress amongst the traditional. And we have to be very careful, because if we tear down all the old stuff, we're not just losing our, the look of it. We're losing really a part of ourself, right? And 20 years down the road, when you look back and you're like, yeah, that was cool. I wish I would have that again. It's like, you could have had it if only you tried a little bit harder to hold on to it, right? So I don't know if I'm making any sense in saying all this stuff, but that's all just to say that I've shifted my perspective in the last decade. I think that's all I have to say, guys. I really appreciate you guys listening. If I was rambly today, that's okay. I'm really looking forward to having my next podcast, talking to someone, interviewing them. I think that's probably more natural for me, but this is what you have today. So wherever you are, Red Deer, I